Tropical me está llamando. Con el bongo se escucha ya. Viene a mí el rumor de tu voz, que es como luz, de ilusión y pasión, perfume en flor que cautiva mi ser. Salva tu secreto, guardias de odio y amor.
Document, mellowed and crinkled with time, is the true beginning of this true story. The document, written in the year 1753, revealed the existence of a strange city, a jungle city, lost in a world of wilderness, massive, mysterious. It had been discovered by a long-forgotten Portuguese explorer while on a search for jungle treasure. But this was no jungle dream. The city was real, and it was deserted. The hush of passing centuries had settled like the mists of the Amazon over the huge walls. It seemed more ancient than the pyramids, a forgotten monument to some great chief or king. Incredibly, the massive stones were joined, not by mortar, but had been hewn to fit with mathematical precision. And there was treasure. Gold. Blocks of solid gold. And this suggested there was more, a treasure vault, perhaps. But completing the search through the formidable ruins would take time. So the leader wrote the document which was the record of these events. His purpose was to inform the viceroy of his discovery, while he remained for extended exploration. The document was entrusted to an Indian named Rodriguez, who promptly set out on his way. From those who remained in the lost city, none was ever heard from again. Miraculously, the trusty Indian delivered the document to the viceroy, but for some reason, action was deferred. The document forgotten for more than 150 years. Then early in the present century, it was rediscovered, placed in the National Library of Rio de Janeiro as manuscript number 512. Now, many could read its mellowed pages and wonder, was the city El Dorado a treasure house of jewels and gold still waiting in the deep recesses of the Amazon? One man, a distinguished British artillery officer engaged in making surveys in the dark green heart of South America, must have been more intrigued than most. For he knew the jungle better than most men, and he must have seen the evidence scattered throughout the wilderness. Stones piled on stones, great structures, always toward the Xingu. The lure was irresistible. An expedition was formed that reached Dead Horse Camp May 30th, 1925. The daring quest for the lost city had exhausted the little group. The trek across the dreaded Mato Grosso had been a tortuous experience. Now, before them was the Xingu, River of Despair. From this camp, Colonel P.H. Fawcett sent his last message and trusted it to the guide, whose name was Bernardino.
Por favor, venga acá. Vaya con Dios.
Gracias, señor. Hasta la vista.
That day, a curtain fell around them. A curtain of green silence. The Fawcett party vanished into the inexplicable vastness, and thereby was created a mystery as enigmatic as the lost city itself. What happened to Fawcett? Was he alive? Was he dead? Had he found his El Dorado?
3 years had passed, and from this point on, the story is mine for the telling. My name is Dyatt, Commander George M. Dyatt of the British Naval Reserve. After 3 years, the mystery of Fawcett's disappearance became newspaper headlines all over the world. The North American Newspaper Alliance sent me off to form an expedition to search for the noted explorer. I had explored most of the countries of the world, including parts of Brazil, but now my mission had an added meaning and urgency. I had come inland 1,000 miles from Rio and was heading up the Paraguay River. Destination Cuiabá, gateway to the Mato Grosso. Beyond lay a wild, savage country from which no explorer had ever returned. That was where I would follow Fawcett's trail. I'd met him once, respected him. He was a veteran explorer, one of a vanishing breed of men the world could ill afford to lose. I hoped I would be equal to the task. And there was the mystery of the lost city. Would I find him there, alive, amid the descendants of some forgotten race, living in splendor? These were my thoughts as we passed the native villages, little changed in hundreds of years. Night on the river can be a beautiful experience. Before dawn, we should dock in Cuiabá, the beginning of Fawcett's trail. Yes, this village on the edge of the Mato Grosso was the jumping-off place. We would assemble the equipment here, and I hoped we'd have no trouble in recruiting the extra men we so desperately needed. The village was a mile away. Pedro had secured a truck. That was a good start. Well, let's load up. Everything goes on the truck. Everybody lend a hand. One thing immediately evident was the lack of local assistance. We were left pointedly alone, and we needed 4 men. Well, our work was cut out for us. Every single piece of equipment, article of machinery, clothing, food, supply, every gift for the Indians had to be uncased, assembled, checked, then repacked. More than 3 tons of supplies that we'd have to carry. A giant sloth was a curious visitor. Some people think they look like clowns. John Sims was a lifelong friend. He and Wilbur Harris were the 2 North Americans going with me. There was another visitor that morning.
Commander Dyatt! Commander Dyatt!
Captain Aguirre was a bandit chief. 2 years earlier, I'd found him marooned by his men in the jungle.
Amigo! Mi amigo! Amigo!
Bandit or no, Aguirre was my friend. He came to see me as soon as he learned of my presence in Cuiabá. He'd heard all about our plans. Come with me, huh? Sit down, my friend.
Salud.
Salud. We're looking for Colonel Fawcett. Or haven't you heard?
See, I hear, but I do not believe. You're risking your life for nothing then. I know what happened to your Colonel Fawcett. He was murdered by bandidos for the gold he carried with him.
In the past few weeks, I'd heard 100 different tales of what had happened to Fawcett. I wanted to believe Aguirre's was just another local rumor. From London, Fawcett's tailor had sent us a sample of the clothing the colonel had worn in the jungle. But our main problem was still unsolved. We needed 4 men. And since I knew no Portuguese, they must speak Spanish. It was clearly evident. None of the village men was inclined to enter the Mato Grosso. Both fear and superstition were factors. I decided on a different approach. I'd look for men who might have special reasons for leaving town. It seems Miguel had lost the money his wife had long been saving for a trip into Sao Paulo. I offered to bail him out. He too would take a trip with me. Music hath charms, even if it's only a gramophone in a small native store.
Te siento y te llevo en mi vida. Decir que olvidé mentiría. Recuerda las noches de amor.
At first, he thought I was going to buy the machine and take it with me. But then, well, it was like a genie had appeared out of nowhere to grant a poor man his dearest wish.
Para mí?
I was sure both Carissimo, that was his name, and the music would accompany us. The next recruit was quite unexpected. It seems the little man had stolen the chicken. For that, they were about to carve him up. I would replace the missing fowl. Thus, I gained the grateful services of the now smiling Juan. Julio would have walked to the end of the earth for a calabash pipe. And so, my 4 camaradas were signed, and they all spoke Spanish. My only concern was, how long would such men last when the going got tough? Now I was anxious to get started. Dr. Emmett Wilson, who worked in the village, had been away until that night.
Here we are, of course. Here's Bakiri. We know Fawcett crossed the Plan Alto to Dead Horse Camp. From there, he intended floating down to the Xingu. From there, he planned to strike due east.
Fawcett believed that his lost civilization lay between the Xingu and the San Francisco.
That's a devil of a long way to pursue a legend. I've researched the stories, of course, from the white Indians to the towers that shine by night.
To Fawcett, they were real, just as real as the lost city of document 512. By the way, you young fellows better watch your step when you leave Vakiri. Just a moment. I'll show you what I mean. I've been keeping a friend of mine from those parts for study. I'd like you to meet him. You mean to say that fish lights those lights? This fellow generates 500 volts. I lost a team of horses to electric eels last year. They were shocked unconscious at a river crossing and the poor beast drowned. Which brings me to the point of my demonstration. When you leave Vakiri, you're stepping off the edge of the world. You're in a green hell, where the most innocent plant or animal can spell potential trouble. The smallest insect can kill you just as dead as the largest boa constrictor. This is a friendly fellow, compared to some of the creatures you'll meet.
A rather ominous note for our last night in Cuiabá. It was quite a departure. Perhaps better this way. Sober, our camaradas might not have shown up. Hey, they're all drunk. Well, we'll just have to pour them aboard.
Por favor, vamos. Vamos arriba.
Momentito. Arriba. Up you go. Go on. Up. Whoop-la. Su botella, señor.
Gracias, comandante.
Por favor, todo el mundo, empujen. Todo el mundo, por favor. A la izquierda.
insisted that I meet his wife. She was in the next village. This seemed an unnecessary delay, but Pedro had told me a strange story, hard to believe. Also, I didn't want to offend him. It was an extraordinary experience. Pedro had explained his wife had vision into the beyond.
Hermano Diet, mi casa es su casa. Mi esposa.
Buenos días, señora.
Mucho gusto, comandante Dial. Por favor, asiento.
Muchas gracias.
Carniña, invoca tus espíritus. Trata de percibir dónde se encuentra el coronel Fawcett.
Pedro asked her to evoke the spirits in our behalf. The woman was undoubtedly in a trance.
El coronel Fawcett está
Colonel
prisionero.
Fawcett is a prisoner with Indians.
Carniña, ¿dónde está el coronel Fawcett? ¿Dónde está?
Where is Colonel Fawcett?
Está viviendo en el bajo
He's living on the
Xingu.
banks of the Xingu.
Lo veo por las riberas de un río.
I see him near the river. E.T. E.T.? A word I didn't understand.
No me he dado percibir
But
más.
that was all. She could talk no more. It was truly amazing. I'd heard many of the Indian women were spiritualists. You either believe in such things, or you don't. On the road, and it wasn't bad, we chugged along for 3 days. Thanks to the trusty Model T, we were cutting weeks off Fawcett's time. But the way we were loaded, I was glad the hills were gradual and few. Where the road ended, there was a settlement and a waiting herd of donkeys. By arrangements I'd made with the Geary, they were waiting for us. The little beasts would be our next form of locomotion. Across the Plan Alto, the high plain of the Mato Grosso. But first I had a most important man to locate. The only living witness to at least a part of the mystery we had to solve. That would be the Indian, Bernardino. Buenos días, señora.
Buenos días, señor.
¿Sabe usted dónde está la casa de Bernardino?
Oh, sí es más allá.
Oh, yes, they knew just where he was.
Muchas gracias, señora.
De nada.
Looks like he's here.
Bernardino?
Sí, señor, buenos días.
This was the man, Bernardino. He had accompanied Fawcett as far as Dead Horse Camp and carried back his last message. Y este es mi amigo Pedro.
Tanto gusto.
¿Tú quieres venir con nosotros a la selva? Estamos buscando Coronel Fawcett. Certainly, Bernardino was essential to the success of our mission. And he would go with us. Bernardino knew a shorter route back. It would take us across a shallow river. All right. Take it easy. An eel. Electric eel.
Hurry back. Hold it. Run back. Run back. Steady, boy. Steady. Steady. Steady, boy. Steady.
That's all right. No real damage, but I was glad to leave that supercharged critter. In the first light of dawn, the trek really began. They call this the Mato Grosso. Stretches over a large part of central Brazil. In it, you can find most anything. We would have sand and dirt, blistering sun and freezing nights. And we would have rain and wind. That night, only the crackling of the fire disturbed the lonely silence. In this altitude, the cold was bitter. And these men I'd recruited for the trip, men who had never before journeyed but a few miles from their village, must have had sobering thoughts in the long hours before dawn. By mid-morning, the desert was a furnace again. That followed, we watched the sky, its moods and changes, foretold the fortunes of our tedious progress. Another storm was coming. Now we would welcome some cool rain. But this one brought only dry wind and parched sand. Come on.
Frida! Johnny! Hang on to the tent!
It was over. But oh, what a mess. I was beginning to think even the jungle might be more kind than this ill-tempered wasteland. Then, after 27 bone-racking days, came a tired and weary morning when the seemingly incredible happened. The desert was behind us. We had reached the river. We watched the donkeys as they started back. There went our last link to civilization. We were alone, on the edge of the unknown. From now on, we would travel by water. We had unpacked and assembled the canoes. They were light, just canvas over a frame. But I was convinced that they would carry the load.
Muy bien, síguelo. Vamos,
The the river was the Kiluseu. It would take us to Dead Horse Camp, where the mystery would really begin. From there, we'd head downriver to the Kulueni, then finally to the Xingu. This river of despair winds through unexplored territory for over 1,000 miles until it reaches the Amazon. But our first objective was Dead Horse Camp, where we hoped to pick up Fawcett's trail. At a narrowing of the river, we found a Y carved on a tree. Bernardino had told us he thought this might be Fawcett's blaze mark. Why he would choose it was a mystery. Perhaps he used the symbol to throw others off the track, others who might also seek his lost city. But there was no mistaking. This was Dead Horse Camp, where Bernardino was the last known person to see Fawcett alive. John had made radio contact with the newspaper alliance in New York. There would be headlines in the morning paper. Rescue party reaches Dead Horse Camp. Yes, that would be news back there. Carissimo, whose display of emotions was sometimes almost childlike, had something on his mind. This ferocious little animal is called a coatimundi. So we had a new member of the expedition, little Coati. Watching the men settling down for the night, I sensed a feeling of tension among them. We were on the threshold of a savage world from which no white man had ever returned. I had assumed the responsibility of leading them into it. I prayed I would have the good fortune to lead them out. Night in the jungle can do strange things to a man's nerves. It's then the creatures of the jungle come alive. Night is their domain. We were the intruders. The jaguar, most feared beast of the jungle. To the nighttime serenade. At daybreak, Juan went to the river to perform his morning ablutions.